Hello everyone, it's time for my Friday worship today, and this week we've been learning all about Lent and how it relates to Jesus's time in the desert, where he had to keep going through some really difficult stuff. And I wanted to talk to you about keeping going, about perseverance today. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have a go at making. Now, I don't know if you know how butter is made, but basically I've got here some double cream. You can see that. And I'm going to pour it into this, I'll pour some of it into this see-through jar here. I'm just going to put the lid on, and I'm really hopeful this isn't going to leak everywhere. Try and be really careful to make sure it doesn't leak. And I'm just going to start shaking it, because the way to make butter is basically to churn cream, and churning is pretty much the same as gently shaking something. This is starting to leak, which is a bit annoying, but we're going to keep going. It's not leaking too badly at the moment. So I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going. I'm going to keep persevering with my shaking. You can see I've started to get some on my hands, so I'm going to try and be a little more careful. I'm going to try and just shake it from side to side so it doesn't come out of the top. But at the moment, it doesn't look very much like it's turning into butter. It just looks like cream still. I'm going to keep shaking, keep shaking, keep shaking. Well, to be honest, what I'm going to do, I'm going to shake it after my assembly, and I'm going to not keep my recording on, because that will be a little bit boring, but I'll turn the recording off and then bring it back on, and I'm going to see if we get any butter later on. Anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a story about, it's called the story of the frog that fell into the cream. So here we go, here's the story. A young frog lived in a muddy pond together with his frog sisters, his frog brothers, and his frog parents. He liked his home and he loved his family. He'd learned to swim in a small muddy puddle. His family shouted, "Keep trying," they croaked, "kick hard." So Frog kicked his legs. He didn't give in. But often when he was swimming, he longed to explore the world beyond his pond. I'm sure we all long to explore the world a bit sometimes, don't we? So one day he hopped out of the water and headed towards a nearby farm. Frog hopped past the sheep pens and the newborn lambs. He hopped past the stables, watched by the patient horse, and hopped quickly past the yard where the hens clucked and scratched, past the shed where the cows were milked, and into the cool, damp shade of the dairy. All frogs were cool, damp places, and this young frog stayed in the dairy until he decided it was time to head back to his muddy pond. So he kicked his legs, and with a large leap, he fell straight into a jug of cream. Well, he kicked his legs again. The sides of the jug were slippery. He kicked his legs and kicked again and again, but there was no escape. He began to grow tired and feared that he'd sink to the bottom of the jug and drown. So he thought about his family, safe at home in the muddy pond. He remembered how they told him to keep trying. He thought, "I will keep trying." So he kicked his legs again and again. But what was the use? He kept growing more and more tired. He really thought that he'd drown. He still kicked hard and kept afloat until something really odd happened. Suddenly, he felt some lumps between his toes. Frog kept on kicking his legs and eventually found that he was sitting on something that looked like yellow mud. The cream had turned to butter. He gave one last tremendous leap and was free. Back at the muddy pond, the young frog was welcomed by his worried family. "I almost drowned," he said, "but I kicked hard. I kept trying." And that's the message of Lent, isn't it? To keep trying, to persevere, to keep trying our best, just like the frog did in that situation. I want you to think about a time when you felt, when you've been in a difficult situation, or you felt really challenged. It might be during this lockdown, you felt like that. A moment when you felt stuck. And I want you to remember, did you follow that keep trying advice? Did you persevere and make it better yourself? That's what Jesus did, and that's what we should all try to do as well. Dear God, whatever challenges lie ahead today, help us to be strong and not to give in. Help us to persevere. Amen. Right, I'm going to pause my recording now, and I'm going to go back to trying to make my butter from this cream, and we'll see, hopefully it'll come back on and you'll see whether I've managed it or not in a couple of minutes. I'm going to stop my recording. So we're now about 15 minutes after my start of my assembly. You saw the cream that I poured in to start with. Well, you can now see, I think, possibly, I'm going to try and pour some out onto this towel that I've got here. You might not have butter yet, but we certainly have, you can see it coming out now, much thicker cream. It's not quite butter yet. I'd have to keep going for a little while longer to make it into butter, but it's looking a lot better than it did. So I did persevere for a certain amount of time. I probably could have persevered and eat a lot longer, but you could think, well, that frog, how much he must have persevered to get to the point that he managed to stay there and was actually kicking against butter. That was an amazing story and amazing perseverance. So thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.